civil disorders. Look it up in the index. Here's a book with over 600 pages of fine print dealing with all of the causes of civil turmoil. And the words communism or communist aren't found even once. Not even to say that they looked into it and found it not to be an important factor, which is the expected cliche today. Apparently, the internal threat of communism is no longer even worth looking into. But what about the other half of the pincers? Is there any evidence of pressure from below? Well, consider the nature of such things as the mass action tactics of the Selma March of 1965, the various peace marches and civil rights marches held in almost every major city in the intervening years, the Poor People's Campaign and Resurrection City. What are these? Do they truly represent an expression of the majority of Americans, or are they merely well-organized pressure groups putting on an impressive show to create the illusion of vast popular support? And what effect does this have on Congress? Every time there's a new show of strength, doesn't Congress buckle under the political pressure and pass into law the recommendations previously made by some commission or agency of the federal government? And hasn't the silent majority been caught between these pincers? And hasn't the country been taking giant strides to the left through our constitutional process and in the name of the nation? The entire process was best described, I think, by Martin Luther King. He wrote an article for Saturday Review, which appeared in the April 3rd, 1965 issue. And here is how he described it. The goal of the demonstrations in Selma, as elsewhere, is to dramatize the existence of injustice and to bring about the presence of justice by means of non-violence. Long years of experience indicate to us that Negroes can achieve this goal when four things occur. 1. Nonviolent demonstrators go into the streets to exercise their constitutional rights. 2. Racists resist by unleashing violence against them. 3. Americans of conscience, in the name of decency, demand federal intervention and legislation. And 4. The administration, under mass pressure, initiates measures of immediate intervention and remedial legislation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect description of how pressure from below is being used in America today to further the nonviolent proletarian revolution. You know, it always bothers me when I have to agree with the communists. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while I'll read something in the communist press that is 100% correct. It comes out in their favor even without their having to lie about it. And here's an example. In the People's World, the January 29, 1966 issue, the communists said, "The problem is that the power structure that runs both of the old political parties seems to have great difficulty in comprehending what is taking place in the Negro freedom movement. They don't know a revolution when they see one." And all I can say to that is amen. They sure don't. They call it everything under the sun except a revolution. And they're the same people, by and large, who still tell you it can't happen here. Ladies and gentlemen, not only can it happen here, not only is it happening here, but it has been happening here for years. The problem is that most of us haven't been able to recognize a revolution in all of its forms when we saw one. Well, all right, so what do we do about it? What are the countermeasures that need to be taken? And where do we begin? We begin by knowing what not to do, because if we do the wrong things, obviously that's worse than doing nothing at all. For example, as I'm sure everyone here is well aware, we must not be led into placing the blame for the riots, the civil disorders, on the Negro people of our nation. Even those few who are promoting hatred and violence in the black communities are not themselves the cause. They're merely being used by forces far bigger than they are to promote the violent phase of the revolution in America. just as many white people are being used, I might add, by those same forces to promote the non-violent phase. Secondly, and this too almost goes without saying, we mustn't resort to violence either as a means of furthering political or social goals. And we must do everything humanly possible to discourage others from doing so. Third, we must not be fooled into thinking that the causes of our civil turmoil are such things as poverty, poor housing, lack of education, and similar social or economic factors. As a matter of fact, most of today's self-styled revolutionaries, black and white, come from good homes, could earn better than average incomes if they wanted to work. And in fact, they're products of some of the finest institutions of higher learning. We shouldn't be indifferent to the social and economic conditions of those in need, and we should do all we can within the concepts of economic and political freedom to improve those conditions. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking that these are the causes of our national problems today. Fourth, we must not look to the expansion of government and government programs as the solution. As I hope I've made it clear by now, this is exactly what the communists want us to do, because it's the very process whereby they hope to come to power in this country through non-violent means. These are the things we must not do. What then does that leave on the positive side? Well, first of all, and perhaps most obvious of all, we must support our local police. But that means a lot more than just putting a bumper sticker on the car. It means taking an active interest in civic affairs to ensure that the police aren't saddled with so-called civilian review boards. Nothing can be quite so damaging to police morale and efficiency as converting every arrest into a trial of the policeman instead of the criminal. To support your local police also means making sure they remain independent of control from Washington. And don't forget, whatever the federal government finances today, it shall control tomorrow. Next on the list, we must recapture the American faith in the free enterprise system. Capitalism has become almost a dirty word in some places, mainly because its defenders were busy enjoying the fruits of capitalism while its enemies were busy writing books and giving lectures. Consequently, capitalism has retreated steadily before the onslaught of socialism and now is struggling for its very existence. Young and old, we must become students again and study the theories of Madison and Jefferson, Bastiat and von Mises, just as intently as our enemies pursue the pages of Marx and Lenin, Galbraith and Keynes. Not only must we become grounded in theory, but we must become advocates and spokesmen as well. We must know what we stand for as well as what we oppose. Next, and this is probably the most difficult task of all, we must carry this message regarding the dual nature of communist revolution to our friends, our neighbors, our business associates, and everyone who will listen. Now, this is hard by and large because people don't want to hear it. It's bad news. It spoils